here at the Maricopa County Home Show is kind of epic. Like, I've never been treated so much like I hate this word.
David Bromstad, the iconic host of My Lottery Dream Home, is known for his vibrant energy, unforgettable style, and bold designs. But what if we told you that behind the joy and fabulous fashion lies a story of pain, betrayal, and battles that nearly broke him? Why was David publicly humiliated in front of hundreds of classmates? What tragic events nearly forced him off television forever? And what recent health scare left fans fearing the worst? In this video, we'll reveal the untold story behind David's glittering exterior. From the trauma he faced in his youth to the personal battles and lawsuits that haunted his rise to fame. This is not just a story about a designer. It's about resilience, redemption, and survival. The bullying that broke him. Before he was the exuberant, color-loving TV personality America adores, David Bromstad was a soft-spoken boy growing up in the small, traditional town of Cokato, Minnesota. Born into a conservative Scandinavian-American family, David's world was one of rigid expectations, unspoken rules, and little tolerance for anything that strayed outside the norm. From an early age, David stood out. He loved to draw. He was artistic, expressive, and emotionally open, qualities that didn't earn praise in the culture he was raised in. Instead, they made him a target. By high school, the teasing had escalated into something far more damaging. In one of the most traumatic moments of his life, David recalled how over 600 of his classmates humiliated him in a single, orchestrated event. In the school cafeteria, in broad daylight, the entire student body stood up and made obscene gestures at him, mocking, laughing, and isolating him. Even worse, the person meant to protect students, the school principal, joined in. Whether swept up by the crowd or unaware of the deeper pain his actions caused, his participation cut deeply. For David, it wasn't just bullying, it was a public betrayal. In a 2008 interview with Out magazine, David coined the phrase "daylight hell" to describe that moment, an experience so brutal and isolating that it became a hinge in the life of his young self. The horrifying thing in him was that nothing ever felt safe after that day. The hallways were not places of movement, they were battlefields. The cafeteria, however, had gone from being a lunchroom to a war zone, and the adults, rather than acting as protectors, became bystanders at best and participants at worst. No teachers intervened, no counselor checked in. David left to endure the trauma alone. In the months that followed, David began a gradual withdrawal. He became quieter, more introspective about himself. While most teens searched for identity and friendship, David did little but try to survive from day to day. He carried the heavy burden of humiliation on the inside, all the while hiding a growing storm of anxiety and depression. Much later, he came to see that a great deal of the struggle in that decade of his 20s had come from emotional pain he had not yet learned to process. But unbeknownst to him, out of chaos came a glimmer of something remarkable. David turned towards art, not merely as a distraction, but as a lifeline. He sketched, he painted, he built universes wholly textured in color and possibility, free from judgment. Color became a means of surviving emotionally. Every bright tint used on canvas turned into a rebuttal against the heaviness of his soul. Back then, art was not expression, it was escape. What became especially powerful is how these early survival techniques later evolved into the foundation of his career. The bright, daring palettes viewers now associate with David's HGTV designs, those were conceived in those painful private moments when color became his only refuge. His design attitude was not merely cheerful, but almost defiant. a kind of silent revolt against the grayness of his past. But it was much later that public discussion of these early traumas came to light. For years, fans only saw the smiling designer who illuminated every room he walked into. But behind that smile was a person who had fought for his identity long before the cameras could ever consider turning on him. David's story resonates as his joy was not a birthright. It was an accomplishment. He fought for this light that he holds so dearly now. Cruelty did not become a defining moment for him. Rather, it transformed him. And that transformation was just the beginning. And just when he found his dream job, life had another cruel twist in store. The Disney dream that crashed. After surviving the cruel isolation of his teenage years, David Bromstad set his sights on something magical, a dream he had nurtured since childhood, working for Disney. For a young man who had always found comfort in drawing and storytelling, becoming a Disney animator wasn't just a career goal, it was salvation. He enrolled at the Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida, known for preparing students to work with Disney. And he thrived there. In a space where creativity was finally celebrated rather than ridiculed, David blossomed. After graduating, David landed the job that had once felt like a fantasy. He joined Disney's illustrious animation department, becoming part of a world that millions only ever get to admire from afar. Surrounded by brilliant creatives, he poured his heart into the work. It was validating. It was exciting. And for the first time, David felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The dark shadows of high school were behind him. He was living his dream. But dreams, especially in creative industries, can be fragile. In the early 2000s, the animation world faced a massive shift. Traditional hand-drawn animation, once Disney's gold standard, was being replaced by computer-generated imagery, CGI. The studio underwent a sweeping reorganization. Budget cuts and layoffs were widespread, and David's department wasn't spared. Almost overnight, he lost his dream job. The role he had trained for, sacrificed for, and emotionally clung to was gone. This was not merely a professional setback, it was a deeply personal one. The position had meant everything David struggled to obtain: acceptance, recognition, a sense of belonging. Now it was all stripped away, back to square one. No map, no paycheck, just questions. What now? Is that it? Did he peak too early? For some time, David floated aimlessly. There went another blow to his self-esteem. This was an emotionally raw time for him, a time when it seemed that his very foundation gave way just when he thought he'd found solid ground under his feet. With no animation job, the bills really started to pile up. Yet again, David had to find another way to support himself. His love for color and designs for a lifetime led him the switch to interior decoration. The work wasn't glamorous. First, he took on small projects designing mainly children's rooms, often at a loss. There was no brand behind him. No clients were vying for his services. But he pressed on. Painting a mural or redoing a space was another job in a long chain of jobs that led him to his next one. The glitzy title with Disney was fading, but something far more powerful began to emerge: resilience. From this very modest beginning, David, over time, began to carve out a style that was bold, expressive, and distinctly his. It was this artistic language used during his days as a bullied kid that was now being fed through the mill of real-life homes. Color was so much more to him than mere decoration. It was therapy, emotion, and intention. The clients started to take notice. It spread by word of mouth. Just when David felt he might be stuck in a creative limbo forever, a door swung open. In 2006, he was persuaded by a friend to audition for a new HGTV reality competition called Design Star. The show wanted not just designers, but celebrities, people who could light up a room as well as a lens. David auditioned with little expectation, feeling wounded after leaving Disney. But once he got on camera, magic happened. His warmth, humor, and wildly inventive designs stood out from the beginning. He not only competed, but triumphed. With a new platform, an audience, and a new beginning on the line. What David did not know then was that losing his Disney job had made way for something far beyond. More than a job, more human. The animator who wanted to give life to characters for a long time was now giving hope to real people by creating spaces for them to heal and thrive. He bounced back with fame and fortune. But behind the camera, a bitter betrayal was brewing. The lawsuit that shattered his reputation. By 2015, David Bromstad had become a familiar, comforting face to millions of HGTV viewers. Known for his charisma, bold designs, and infectious smile, he embodied the fantasy behind My Lottery Dream Home, a man who helped others build their dream lives. But behind the glittering television persona, a storm was quietly forming. And when it finally broke, it threatened to undo everything he had worked so hard to build. The headlines stunned fans. David Bromstad was being sued by his former partner and business associate, Jeffrey Glasgow. In a civil complaint filed in Florida state court, Glasgow accused David of betrayal on multiple levels, both romantic and financial. The allegations weren't vague or minor. They were deeply personal, lurid, and damaging. Glasgow claimed that their long-term relationship had functioned as a de facto marriage, and that David had violated the trust between them by misusing shared assets. According to the suit, those assets had been squandered on illegal substances and escorts, including what Glasgow described as wild hookup parties and the hiring of male escorts. He painted a picture of excess and recklessness that clashed dramatically with David's squeaky-clean public image. Fans were left stunned. Was it possible the warm, cheerful designer on TV was hiding such chaos behind the scenes? Was this the real David Bromstad? For most celebrities, such a lawsuit would typically create a flurry of PR activity statements, interviews, damage control, but David did the opposite. He did it by going silent. No press conference, no social media defense. He refused to enter into a public war of words and allowed the legal process to take its course. To many observers, this silence was as puzzling as the lawsuit itself, but in hindsight, may probably be his most strategic and dignified move. Over several months now, the case was peddled through the byways of the law. The court listened to Glasgow's claims, appreciated the proof or lack thereof, and in April 2016 handed out a firm verdict. It dismissed the case entirely. The allegations that Glasgow made against David were proven unsubstantiated and found to lack clear supporting evidence. Not only that, the said court ordered Glasgow to pay the legal expenses incurred by David due to what it termed as abuse of the court system. With their statement, David's lawyers broke a long silence with a vengeance. Outrageous allegations levied by a desperate person. The court found that the claims were false and imposed sanctions on the plaintiff for trying to embarrass Mr. Bromstad. Still, the stain of the scandal would plague David long after the lawsuit had begun. Fans argued, the tabloids raged, chit-chat rooms conversed back and forth. By the time David had won his fight in a court of law, opinion had been decidedly tainted. Though in the months that followed, David maintained a near silence. His only comment was a slight but telling sentence posted to Instagram stating, "I have learned that on certain occasions, silence is the most powerful thing you can do." That was the only time he ever publicly referred to the whole legal fiasco. For David, the pathway forward was not much about defending himself as much about living with integrity and grace. He cuts off all ties with Glasgow on the side. The relationship existed, once romantic and professional, in every sense of the word. The lawsuit may not have been true, but it clearly hurt. Not because of the accusations from someone he truly put his trust in. That was the more painful betrayal. The public eye was nothing compared to this. Yet, just as he did in past incidents, David chose to pick himself and carry on. He continued with work and smiled through his pain. He showed old fans and new ones why hardship doesn't define you. Your response to it does. But even after surviving a legal ambush, heartbreak was far from over. This time, it hit closer to home. Family emergency. Just as the dust was beginning to settle from the legal storm, David Bromstad found himself in the middle of an even more personal crisis, one that no lawsuit or courtroom could prepare him for. In the span of just over a year, he was forced to confront two terrifying moments that would reshape his priorities, deepen his perspective, and remind him of the fragile, unpredictable nature of life. The first blow came in early 2015. David's close friend, Greg Girard, suffered a sudden and devastating hemorrhagic stroke. It was unexpected, shocking, and life-threatening. One moment, Greg was healthy and full of life. Next, he was in a hospital bed, unconscious and fighting for survival. David didn't hesitate. He rushed to his friend's side and quickly became one of Greg's most vocal advocates during the early days of recovery. He launched a fundraising campaign to help cover medical expenses, sharing updates and emotional appeals on social media. "Every day of physical therapy is a step closer," he wrote in one post, his words resonating with thousands who followed the journey. It was a rather sober experience. While David was known for helping others have their dream homes, he was now witnessing an important person in his life lose even the ability to perform simple tasks. The contrast was thick. He talked of the emotional toll, the helplessness in watching a human being suffer, and the glorious moments of small achievements, such as the first time Greg opened his eyes or responded to a nurse. Just when he seemed to be settling into a life dictated by crisis, tragedy struck again. A Facebook update in January 2016 noted that David's biological father had been hastily admitted to the hospital in critical condition. His heart was badly failing with a dangerous rhythm and a resting heart rate of around 136 beats per minute. The doctors were worried he was going to have an intervention with seizure, if not worse. Once again, David was there. He canceled appointments. He took time off sets. And at that moment, he was not a celebrity, not a designer. He was just a son. Afraid, he was hopeful that he could do nothing but wait and pray. In his post, he spoke bluntly. His heart valves are malfunctioning. His heartbeat is irregular. They are watching closely to prevent seizures and stroke. It was an intensely vulnerable moment, affording fans a view into the reality of the man behind beautifully curated Instagram photos and bubbly moments on screens. These two emergencies, coming so close together, sent David into deep reflection. He began to think about career pace, the relative value of public success, and the need for being down to earth. Whereas he was dealing with luxury and fantasy by helping lottery winners purchase million-dollar estates, keeping people alive became his reality. That contrast caused a division in him. He would no longer define success in the same way again. Success, for him, was no longer a matter of how many shows he did or how many followers he garnered. It was all about showing up for others, for moments, for life in its unexpected turns. He would probably not have noticed that he had gone missing at that time. On screen, he still lit up and smiled handsomely. But in real life, David shut everything out that was trivial. He had a health checkup instead of a red carpet rolled out at the award nights. Silent prayers were his preferred method ahead of interviews, and even when he returned to view again, there was a unique presence of silent strength in him that had been absent previously. And just as he began to rebuild his inner world, fans thought he was facing a life-threatening illness. The oxygen tube panic. In May 2025, fans of David Bromstad awoke to a jarring sight on Instagram. There he was, the endlessly cheerful host of My Lottery Dream Home, reclining in a chair, relaxed, but with a nasal oxygen tube in place. No caption, no context, just the image of David with clear plastic tubing up his nose, a medical setup most people associate with hospitals, illness, or worse. Within hours, social media was ablaze. Concerned followers flooded his direct messages and comment sections with questions and fears. Are you okay, David? What's going on? Why is there a cannula up your nose? The image struck a nerve. For a public figure known for energy, color, and high spirits, this sudden glimpse into what looked like a serious health issue hit hard. It wasn't the polished, HGTV-friendly version of David the public was used to. It was raw and ambiguous. There was quite a bit of speculation. Was he ill? Was there some kind of cover-up? Had he been engaged in a protracted, clandestine battle with an illness all along? The fans were gravely concerned, and, considering the fact that David had a history of quietly handling crisis, a generally accepted view, they figured the worst. Thus, when the truth came out the very next day, it was certainly far from what was perceived. In the follow-up post, David clarified that he hadn't been sick at all. He explained that the oxygen tube was used during hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is a health and wellness treatment involving pure oxygen in a pressurized chamber. It is said to help with healing after an injury, decrease inflammation, and promote general detox. It could now be considered fashionable among elite athletes and celebrities. He described it as part of his self-care regimen. Not sick, super healthy and thriving. This is just another tool I use to stay balanced and energized. No worries, y'all. The fans' relief is instant, but the moment lingers with a deeper sense. A window into the increasing journey of wellness that David has quietly pursued. That journey emphasizes more than just style or performance. Behind the reason, deeply invested in physical and mental health, David had been for quite some time. The picture may have been in its reverberation. It showed something much deeper than simply a tube. A man who has gone through public shame, legal battles, near-family emergencies, emotional turmoil, and emerged on the other end with new discipline. It was not just living to entertain others, but actually, in a manner of speaking, living to maintain his own peace. In the months after his oxygen tube post, David started to open up about wellness more often. Breath work, sleep routines, mindful eating, and energy healing. He would not normally go into detail, but he chose to give small snippets of a life focused on recovery, intention, and self-awareness. And it wasn't just physical recovery. In subtle ways, David showed that healing meant learning to trust again. Trust his own body, trust the people around him, and trust that his vulnerability wouldn't be used against him. For a man who had once survived coordinated school bullying and a public courtroom battle filled with ugly accusations, that trust had been hard-earned. What surprised many was how unafraid he now seemed to share less than perfect moments. Once a figure who radiated glossy, TV-friendly joy, David had begun weaving his real self into the narrative, the part of him that got overwhelmed, who needed oxygen to recharge, who spent quiet mornings alone tending to plants and breathing deeply. Out of the spotlight's glare, David was quietly building something more lasting than fame, a whole new life. Rebirth, healing, and creative freedom. The version of David Bromstad that fans now see on television and social media is not just the result of fame or styling, it's the product of survival. After years of navigating personal trauma, public scrutiny, and emotional upheaval, David quietly stepped into a new era, one defined by clarity, emotional depth, and complete creative freedom. This shift didn't arrive overnight. In the wake of lawsuits, health scares, and personal loss, David slowly retreated from the spotlight, not disappearing, but pulling back just enough to breathe, reflect, and recalibrate. Social media, once filled with press events and polished production sets, became a quieter, more authentic space. His posts transformed from promotional to personal. A walk through his garden, a messy, paint-covered shirt in the middle of an art project, a morning coffee on the porch with no filter, no script. One turning point came in the form of a mountain, literally. In early 2023, David posted a photo atop Reinebringen in Norway, sweaty and smiling after a grueling hike. The caption read, "I've been through a lot over the past few years. I'll share when I'm ready. But for now, it feels incredible to be clear-headed, fully present, and living the life I'm meant to live." The words, understated but deeply honest, marked a rebirth not just of the man, but of the artist. He began considering each nook of his life as an opportunity to display. Not for display, but self-expression. In his dream house in Winter Park, Florida house he designed from head to his surroundings were full of color, texture, and personal history. Generic decisions didn't come into play. Every piece of art, motif, and paint on the walls narrated the story. It is not the design to win awards. It is the design for healing. Not just a live-in den, but a healing retreat, where David could meditate in the morning and prepare dinner with his partner, Nicholas Martin, during twilight, and escape when the world outside grew too noisy. David has reportedly said in interviews, "This is a physical manifestation of everything I've fought to protect my personal identity, my creativity, my peace." He did the same in fashion. Long known for his boldness, David's wardrobe stretched further down the spectrum of eclecticism, expressive fearlessness, animal prints, glitter jackets, painted boots, really anything goes. To all outsiders, it may look like over-the-top flamboyance. To David, it is armor, it's art, it's rebellion. Every outfit is a statement. I survived, I'm still here, and I refuse to dim. He also extended his signature to his personal brand in these years, launching a home decor collection with Grandin Road, starting to produce art prints reflecting his mostly personalized design philosophy, and other things outside the media personality thing, where David moves to create entrepreneur. His collections aren't intended for mass-market trends. They're bold, often whimsical, and unmistakably personal. "I don't want to decorate houses," he once stated during an HGTV profile. "I want to help people feel something when they walk into a room. I want design to remind people who they are or who they want to be." Beyond commerce, he has assigned great value to community and mentorship. As HGTV's first openly gay host, David was never one to draw attention to his sexuality. But he feels more than ever that it is his responsibility as a quiet pathfinder. Several times he's appeared in Out magazine's esteemed Out 100 list, not so much for grand political gestures, but rather for simply being himself in an industry that often prefers one to play roles. And while his personal evolution was underway, his career was entering its most powerful chapter yet. A legacy bigger than design. David Bromstad's story started with crayons and cartoons and led to luxury real estate and national fame. But somewhere along the way, his legacy grew into something much larger than design. What began as a dream to decorate children's rooms or animate Disney characters evolved into a far more personal mission: to live and lead with authenticity, color, and courage. After nearly 2 decades in the spotlight, David's legacy isn't defined by how many homes he's decorated or how many viewers tune in to My Lottery Dream Home each week. It's about the lives he's touched, the stereotypes he's shattered, and the permission he's given others to embrace who they are, loudly, beautifully, and unapologetically. It's easy to think of David as the guy who helps people buy dream homes with lottery winnings. That's the headline role. But beneath that role is a man who rebuilt his own dream home from the ground up. Not just the physical one in Florida, but the internal one he now inhabits with peace. His cheerful exterior isn't a mask. It's a carefully crafted product of every heartbreak, every betrayal, every lesson learned the hard way. The way he carries himself on television today, kind, playful, vibrant, isn't just personality. It's resilience in action. Every joyful laugh, every dramatic reaction to a colorful backsplash is rooted in years of choosing to show up for life even when it didn't show up for him. That emotional authenticity is what makes David's presence so magnetic. Audiences don't just admire his talent, they trust his heart. And for many LGBTQ+ individuals who grew up without representation, David became more than a host. He became a symbol. Not because he made his identity the focus of his brand, but because he never hid it. He succeeded in an industry that historically preferred its stars to be polished, private, and palatable. He didn't conform. He flourished by being the exact opposite: vibrant, flamboyant, and unmistakably himself. His influence also extends far beyond TV screens. Through public speaking, charity work, and his candid social media presence, David has become a kind of accidental life coach, someone who models how to recover from rock bottom with grace. He's spoken openly about depression, therapy, reinvention, and the need for self-care in the entertainment industry. He doesn't preach wellness, he lives it. And because he's walked through the hard stuff himself, his words carry weight. Fans don't just admire him, they trust him. And when he posted a recent Instagram story in May 2025, showing himself with a nasal oxygen tube, fans worried it might signal a health crisis. The speculation was swift and emotional. Was he okay? Had something happened? Within 24 hours, David addressed the panic, not with denial or PR spin, but with honesty. "I'm super healthy and thriving," he wrote, explaining it was just part of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. What might have become a moment of public fear turned into a reminder. Healing isn't always visible, and health sometimes means taking unconventional steps to stay strong. He wasn't hiding something, he was simply ahead of the curve. In fact, many athletes and wellness experts swear by this therapy for recovery and performance. David just happened to bring it into the mainstream with one unexpected selfie. Which part of David's journey hit you the hardest? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with anyone who needs a reminder that beauty can come from pain, and light can be born from darkness. Click on the next video showing on your screen. Thanks for watching.